President Biden talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu about the possible response today. It was their first phone call in almost 2 months. The president is calling on Israel not to target Iran's nuclear facilities. Former President Trump says they should be the first targets. The Israeli defense minister has said that everything is on the table.
Ruthie Bloom, she's the former advisor to the office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Ruthie, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Gina. Thank you for having me again.
We're also learning at this hour that the United States, they have actually expanded sanctions on Iran following that ballistic attack on Israel. Your thoughts on that? Because obviously there is concern about exports and imports, also trade specifically as it relates to oil.
Yes, well, it's a little late for that, I would say, for the Biden administration that has been in power all these years, and it's one of its first moves was to ease up sanctions on the Iranian regime, enabling billions of dollars, euros, shekels, whatever, to go to the regime for its nuclear program and for its terrorist proxies. So to say, well, they've been attacking Israel, so now, and where they're attacking all over, and the Houthis are attacking in the Red Sea, attacking American interests, by the way, we're gonna put more sanctions on the regime. No, you see, it's too late for that. Military action is required against the Iranian regime, and we're aware that Washington does not want Israel. Biden has said to Israel, please do not attack the oil fields or the nuclear facilities, which is kind of odd because what exactly does he want us to attack? Civilians? Of course not.
So does that mean that this is a moment in history for those Iranian nuclear facilities to be taken out?
If you look at the story of the Iranian nuclear development program over the last few years, decade or more, you can see a story of grandmother's footsteps tiptoeing towards a breakout, towards the ability to use nuclear technology for military purposes, and Israel from time to time intervening to prevent that from happening with kinetic action or whatever. And the West has tried, as everybody knows, the JCPOA, the system to try to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions with a kind of stick and carrot approach. But fundamentally, the world is going to be a safer place for the Iranians not having nuclear weapons. And
so is that a yes?
If Israel has to be the power that stops that from happening, then I am not going to weep hot tears. I think that that the world will be a safer place.
Ruthie, you mentioned a delayed reaction by the Biden administration, and many people this Saturday do feel that same sentiment. They feel that more should be done as Israel is an ally to the U.S. Right here in the U.S., though it is a political season, and the conflict with Israel has been highly politicized as it relates to the Biden administration. Also, former President Donald Trump and his team, as he is also in the race to the White House. We've seen Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speak not only to the Biden administration, but also to former President Donald Trump, who says that more should be done by the Biden administration and that if he was in the Oval Office, none of this would happen. He says that many world leaders are looking at the U.S. as weak because of their lack of response to Israel.
Well, that's absolutely true. I will say the leaders in particular that are looking at the Biden administration or looking at America as weak are in the Middle East. Because in the Middle East, that kind of weakness that you don't stand up to your enemies and you don't defeat them, especially if you're the greatest power in the globe, it encourages them, it emboldens those, especially terrorist groups and terror regimes, of course. President Trump, we don't know what he'll do if he wins the election. What we do know is what he did when he entered office the last time. And one of his first moves was to rip up the Iran nuclear deal and to step up sanctions, maximum pressure on the regime. And in those years, that was very effective. Now, I have to say, I feel that many Israelis imagined that Prime Minister Netanyahu was waiting for November 5th to see who won the election in order to decide what policy to implement right now. But we can't wait. There is no waiting till November 5th. We are being bombarded, blitzed every day all over the country. This is unacceptable. And as you showed in the original clip, weapons are being stored in civilian homes as they were in Gaza and still are in Gaza. Soldiers have to endanger their lives, Israeli soldiers, to find these weapons caches and tunnels, all of the equipment needed to perpetrate another October 7th-like invasion. And not only that, worse than that, and Iran, of course, is behind it. But, Iran has also taken its own initiatives directly against Israel. So the point is, at this point, Israel has to act. Now, we don't know how Israel is going to act. We know that the Israeli cabinet met to discuss different possibilities.
A lot about the battle between democracies and autocracies that is going on in the world, primarily Russia, Iran, and China against the great countries of the United States and the United Kingdom and a lot of Europe. So when you look at this moment, does it make sense at this moment for the United States and the UK to bond with Israel and help them to take out these nuclear sites?
Look, I think that UK, US, and Israel are all allies and friends, and we're all democracies. And that's the difference between us and Hamas, Hezbollah, and the regime in Tehran. And whatever people say about Israel, whatever people say about the tragedy that's been unfolding in Gaza or in Lebanon, the heart bleeds for the people there. But in the end, Israel is trying to deal with people who want to wipe them off the map, wipe the Jewish state, wipe the Jewish people off the map. And that's very, very hard to deal with. And I think the lesson of the last few years is that the democracies of the world, the freedom-loving countries need to come together and stand up for our values. And that means we can't let Israel be destroyed in that way. We have to stand with Israel.
Ruthie, I'm glad you mentioned that clip. If we get back to it, for many people, it took them back to the tunnels with Hamas. We saw Hamas taking over people's homes as well, taking over schools, literally hiding bombs in children's teddy bears, hiding bombs underneath tunnels that go through schools. We're seeing a lot of correlation as it relates to Hamas and Hezbollah, even though these are two totally different entities.
Yes, well, they're two totally different entities in some ways, and in other ways they're not, because they're both Iranian proxies. They both are bloodthirsty terrorist organizations. They both use human shields, their own people, who they don't care if their own people are killed. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Hezbollah and Hamas are both interested in having a lot of civilians killed, so that the international community will blame Israel for harming civilians. They actually, and so of course they kill Israeli civilians, they target Israeli civilians, but they also are perfectly happy when civilians in Gaza and Lebanon are killed. Yes, I would like to say that some of us in Israel we're just sitting on the edge of our seats, waiting to see what surprise move the government and the army are planning. And we believe that it's imminent.
So I know it's Jewish holiday and it's been a while since we last spoke, but the Jewish holiday has not stopped the fighting there in the Middle East. Depending on who you ask, Israel is being hit from all sides. We've seen Hamas attack, we've seen Hezbollah attack, Iran attack, the Yemen Houthi rebels. Can you catch us up, please, with the latest of this conflict?
Yes, and by the way, you're mentioning a Jewish holiday. Today is the highest Jewish holiday there is, Yom Kippur. And may I say that Israel, every Ramadan holiday, the Muslim month of Ramadan, Israel pauses in fighting. It takes care not to offend Muslims, but the same courtesy is not extended to Jews in the Middle East. I'll tell you what has been happening since last night, when many Jews all over the world, and in Israel in particular, began a 25-hour fast, and also many hours in synagogue. And in Israel, every single store is closed. No cars are on the streets or the highways. No television, no radio. But because of the incessant missile fire from Lebanon and elsewhere, the IDF has a channel to enable people who, if they don't hear sirens, air raid sirens, to be aware when they have to go into a bomb shelter.